All right, Maria. It looks like we are ready to go. We are able to go live. So you can go ahead and do so. I'm not sure if you're seeing the messages from Evan, but we are live.
All right. Um, hey everyone, welcome. And we will wait a couple of minutes, but we will begin very, very soon. We will be streaming on multiple platforms on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Facebook. So if you want to invite anyone else last minute or join from a different platform, you're welcome to do so. Also, you can see a QR code right now on your screen. You can scan it right away. It'll allow you to ask questions live and also answer our polls that we have prepared. So I think we are all set to go. So let's jump right in. Today we have a very exciting live stream event for you, which is Practical Financial Analysis Tips for Product Managers with John Freeman. And we are coming with all this interesting information from John, who's amazing, and he's actually with product people. So you're really in for a treat today. Um, Let me introduce myself just very quickly. I'm Maria. I also work at Product People, and I'm an associate product manager consultant. And I'm very excited to be able to be with you with this live stream today. So, just shortly about Product People, what we do, our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. And we empower our product management community to share knowledge generously while managing the hands on work of product manager, owner operations, or product leader on fractional basis. So, there are two parts of what we do. One is product management consulting, essentially. And another part is how we give back. So, we organize free events, talks, live streams, and host live events as well with over 50,000 members globally. And this is just a fun poll. As I've already said, you can go and scan this QR code on the screen right away, and it'll allow you to answer this very fun question for you to kind of like break ice and see what's up a little bit. So the question is, how confident are you that a product management approach, um, sorry, the question is, have you ever struggled to attain proper budget for an initiative? And you can see the options on the screen, and you can just go and ask it right now, and we'll wait for several seconds until the answers start coming in. And I think it's a fantastic question to just see how much knowledge you guys already have and experience with financial operations and product management or related topics. I already see some results coming in. So let's just wait a little longer. You can also use the code on the screen that is here, the numerical one, to access if you have an issues. All right. It seems like a lot of people answered, and the results are actually a very drastic split between options B and D. It's exactly 50%, which is very interesting. So the options are yes, I occasionally struggle to attain proper budget, and D, I've never sought budget for an initiative, which is, I think, pretty understandable in what we're going to talk about. So, all right, with all that, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions on this exciting topic. So, let's jump right in. I'm very excited to introduce to you John Freeman. Um, here's here with us. John, you can wave or something, but John Freeman is a product management consultant at Product People. He's worked in a lot of industries over the years in both B2B, B2C, ranging from medical technology to e-commerce platforms. And he is an alumnus of UCSD, and he also has an MBA from UCLA. So, very excited to have you with us, John. I'll give it over to you and hope you can share all your cool insights with us.
Thank you very much. I'm about to share my screen. And again, yeah, hi, John Freeman here, product management consultant with Product People. I've been with Product People for close to 2 years now, been able to dip my toes in the water, so to speak, at multiple different organizations. Uh, and I'm going to share some practical tips today on financial analysis, as it's certainly something that you can read tons of books on, take lots of classes. I can assure you I've done that. And I've tried to synthesize what I think is probably the most useful bits of information to help you in assessing budget or and attaining budget essentially for bigger picture initiatives. Please let me know if you see my screen change. Maria, it's going well. All right. So we've already done a basic introduction of Product People. Just to reiterate, we are a product management consultancy. We offer product management as a service, primarily for interim product management, whereby if there's a parental leave or if there is the need for a short-term product manager to come in 3 months, a year, you name it, we're there to help you in addition to doing the traditional product management consulting strategy, go to market, 0 to 1, etc. Today, we're going to talk about cost benefits analysis, go through the basics, thinking about assessing development costs, which is often a tricky subject and something that is difficult to do. Thinking about converting the benefits that your initiative may have, and thinking about how that can be converted into gains, as in euros gained by the organization, and when to use a bit more complex type of analysis. So you've probably seen something like this, the four key risks, right? Value, usability, feasibility, and viability. Value, of course, being, is this going to be valuable from a customer's perspective? Usability, able to actually use it. The designers help here. Feasibility, the engineers, those are your best friends when discussing and discovering feasibility. But where I want to focus today is viability. Is this going to actually make the business generate some money? Are we going to make money off of this? Is this worth doing from a purely financial perspective? And how are we going to address this risk? So this is super important that PMs understand how to do some at least base level financial analysis, right? It's to align with business goals. It's going to help you make data-driven decisions, right? If you can put some numbers behind the objective that you're trying to accomplish, it's going to help not only attaining buy-in from other stakeholders, but also it's going to help you make sure that you are actually doing the right thing. And it's also going to help the organization figure out how to allocate resources appropriately, be that actual resources in terms of dollars or euros being spent on something, or allocating resources as in, I need additional developers in order to get my thing done, which I think is a challenge that all of us might face at some point. So let's go over the basics real quick. Costs. There's different types of costs, but example costs, and I'm sure you can think of more. You got your direct costs, right? These are the things that are actually impacting the development, the design, contracts, licenses, things that you need that are directly involved in this particular initiative that you're pursuing. Indirect costs, there's things like training and support and marketing, things that are actually the resources going directly into developing something, but in order to facilitate it, to support it, and to make sure that it gets in the hands of customers. It's also opportunity costs. So these are the missed gains from investing here versus investing somewhere else, right? That's something that should be considered. If we're doing one initiative, it means we're not doing another, oftentimes. And that should be something that you should consider when thinking through your financial analysis. Example benefits, customer acquisition, we want to grow the business, right? Cost savings, a saving is a benefit, ultimately ends up increasing your profitability or your chances of getting to being a profitable organization. You want a market share growth, so you're able to compete within that market. And then sometimes it's just pure revenue, pure top line. And if you have an upsell opportunity, you might not necessarily need to think about customer acquisition because you already have the customer, but hey, we're able to generate more revenues from that customer, right? So high level, super basic costs. Let's say in this particular example, you're outsourcing and you've got a design agency that's given you a flat fee. Here's 5 grand for the design. You're using an agency, giving you a flat fee, 5 grand. You have to license something. There's your costs, and hey, you were able to really figure out some sort of a revenue gain that comes from it. There's your benefits. There's your costs. What's the net profit and loss? Super simple, right? If only it was that easy. It's not always that easy. It does get a bit more complex. So let's think about more complex situations. We want to think about development costs. This is oftentimes one of the things that I see is one of the hardest things for product managers to wrap their heads around is the fact that in an organization, oftentimes the developers are the most expensive part of the organization and the highest cost of actually producing something that's going to impact your product, positive, negative, doesn't matter. Development costs money. So one of the things that the most impactful tools I think you can use in order to assess developer costs is what is called the average fully burdened rate. So what this means is you're taking the average total annual cost of your developers, okay, and that includes, let's say, the health insurance, depending on which country you're in. This could include trainings. This could include uh, equipment, right? There's a bunch of different costs that are embedded, not just the salary, but there's more to it. Take that, divide it by the number of working hours per year. So as an example, an average developer's annual cost is, for the sake of this argument, 150,000 euros. That's a great company to work for if you're a developer. You work 1,800 hours per year, therefore 83 euros per hour, right? You could then convert that into days, you convert that into weeks, right? Whatever actually makes sense for your organization. But at this point, you have some sort of a baseline for understanding how much development costs, at least on a per hour basis. And you could also consider the average rate for other roles that are actually involved in this as well, right? The product manager, his time counts for something. QA time, if you're not counting that as part of development, design, et cetera, there's lots of additional costs that need to be considered from a personnel perspective. So in action, right? So let's say in this example, no design, this is back end only. And this company, the average fully burdened rate for developers, 75 euros, 8 hours a day, they're going to be working, right? Uh, the effort that you're estimating for this particular initiative is about 10 days worth. Okay, cool. It's going to cost us 6 grand in development time in this particular example, right? 2 devs, 1 sprint. Okay. Um, maybe in this example, the product manager makes 100 euros an hour. I wish that was the case. But hey, if we're going to count how much time is the PM actually putting in to this, there you go. There's your people cost. This is something you could do to help assess what are the actual costs of developing this initiative. It's not just your developers. You could consider using other persons that are involved as well. On the benefit side, every benefit that you can think of for your initiative could be, would be, should be measured in euros. Okay. So if we're thinking growth, every new user gained should lead to some amount of euros in revenue. Maybe not today. Maybe you're in a phase of your organization where you're doing a freemium model of some sort. You're going to be charging money at some point. Look, you could still be able to forecast what those projected revenues could be a year from now, 2 years from now, something along those lines. But point is, every new user is potentially new value added to the organization. Say you're thinking about efficiency, right? Maybe there's something you can do to improve your tech stack that's going to ultimately lead to some cost savings, right? Maybe it's something as simple as switching from one server vendor to another because the contracts are cheaper, right? Maybe it's something more complex, like rewriting some of the code that's in Python to C++ because it's more energy efficient. Depends. But the point is that that could also be converted into money. And then, of course, there's upsell opportunities. Uh, every new item added to cart, right? If you can get more items into the cart, you sell more in the e-commerce world. There's plenty more examples I'm sure you could think of as you go through, but the idea being if you think this a benefit to doing this thing from my product, you can convert it into euros. So some examples. Growth. Say in we estimate that this new feature that we're going to develop is going to get us 10,000 new users. We have an average conversion from free to paid about 3%, average sale price for paying customer about 200. For those that convert, boom, this is going to gain us 60,000 euros. Okay. Look, imagine that you've got a monolithic tech stack structure and you want to break it out into microservices, but your CTO, your CPO, they're saying, I can't justify this. There's no revenue gain. Well, maybe there's a savings gain. If you think about the additional labor that has to be allocated to that tech stack to be able to maintain it or to deal with the breakages when you have some code that didn't uh, make it through the stack appropriately. Well, maybe you could make an argument to say, hey, look, we spend this amount of money or effort per year trying to maintain this thing. Look, we could actually save money by not having to maintain it. Yeah, there's going to be a cost to making that change, but there's still it's some fuel to help you in getting buy-in and attaining buy-in from stakeholders that might not see something like that as a benefit. I want to talk about situational financial analysis, meaning it's not always as simple as black and white cost benefits. You also want to understand your company's financial situation to understand maybe some more complex tools that you can use to help you attain buy-in. Right? For example, maybe you're at a small company, maybe you're a startup, pre-Series A, trying to get funding. Maybe you got a short runway as a consequence of that. Does it make sense to be prioritizing something that's going to have returns 10 years from now if you're not confident that you're going to survive the next couple of months? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you work for a gigantic corporation where if you're telling them, hey, we'll get 10 grand next month if we do this thing, they don't care. It's too small. So they're only thinking in big bets. They really want you to focus on something with a 10-year outlook. The opposite situation there. So what do you do if you do find yourself in a scenario where you have a short runway? Okay. A couple of tools to add to your toolbox. You can think about payback period and you can think about time to cash. These two are very similar in terms of how you do this, but one being payback period, how long do you expect it to take for you just to get your investment back? I spend 10 grand to develop this thing. When am I going to get that 10 grand back? Is if it's in 2 months, great. It might be an easy sale, so to speak, to your stakeholders. If it's going to take 10 years, it's probably going to be tough. You might not exist in 10 years. They're not going to say yes. Maybe time to cash. Maybe there is some sort of a desire to impress an investor and they want to see cash flows. They want to see positive cash flows. So getting the initial return on investment might be interesting, but when are you going to see positive cash flows? That might be more interesting. But it's as simple as doing something like this. You can think about what your upfront investment is in month zero. Maybe you have some recurring costs to maintain this thing or as you progress month over month. Maybe you have some projected returns. In month one, you got one customer. Month two, you got two. Somehow or another, month three, you got a whole bunch more. Month four, same thing. You can see time to cash beginning in month three, we're cash flow positive. It's pretty great. We're making more money than we're spending. We're cash flow positive on a month per month basis. A month four, look, we've already recouped our initial investment if you sum up all of the funds that we've earned so far. It took us 4 months to pay this back, right? You can project these things. You can work with your friends in finance, create some guesses, if you will. Oftentimes these are guesses, educated guesses, they should be. But when you can present them in a way like this to say, look, if we invest in this thing now, 4 months later, we're going to have our money back. that might get you buy-in from a stakeholder who might be a little bit concerned. Net present value calculation. This is something that you may have seen in a finance class that you took at some point. But this is for something you want to do for big bets, things that have multiple years of investment. Very difficult to forecast these things. So again, I think you should make some friends with your friends in finance. The finance team and product team should have more conversations. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they should have more conversations, especially if you want to think about long term. What does a net present value calculation look like? It's kind of similar to what we were just doing. We had some investment costs on a month per month basis, and we were thinking about payback period, but now we're thinking about year per year basis, and we're thinking projected revenues on a year per year basis, and what is that cash flow? So your costs or your benefits minus your costs on a year per year basis. You want to project that out to about 10 years. Okay. And this can be very, very difficult. There's going to need to be some market research in this, maybe comparable products that existed in the past that you've seen some sort of a trajectory. There's different ways to do it. I can't speak to your specific company, but thinking about, hey, look, we need to spend a lot of money up front, but we're going to make a lot of money down line. This is comprised not just the cash flow, but there's also this thing called the discount rate. Technically, the discount rate is the interest rate that banks use to lend to each other. I'm a bank, I'm going to lend you money. Here's the interest rate that I'm going to charge you. But oftentimes, financial companies will have some sort of other rate that they use as their internal discount rate, which is another way of thinking about if I'm a company and I want to invest this money today in something that's risk-free, perhaps a bond, perhaps there's a really great stock portfolio ETF something, and that you see a pretty consistent return that the company considers to be risk-free. Remember, your CFO, they're not just investing in this organization and seeing its growth. They have to figure out what to do with their money. Your Apple, you got $200 billion in cash sitting in somewhere. What do you do with it? That's what this discount rate is meant to represent, is essentially like your risk-free investment, if you will. But again, work with your finance team, figure out what they think that might be. If it's not actually the interbanking rate, if it's something else that the organization is using. And guess what? NPV is built into pretty much every single spreadsheet uh, software that exists. Throw equals NPV into Google Sheets or Excel, select your discount rate as the first cell, and then your 10-year cash flow from year 0 to 10, and it will calculate that discount rate for you. In this random example, I'm green. I made some money. I'm happy. Um, some additional tips, best practices. You want to show different scenarios to show that you're thinking best versus worst case. Any sort of investment like this is going to be risky. You want to be transparent about your risks as much as you possibly can to say, hey, I'm making a guess here. It's an educated guess. I've got lots of data to suggest that my guess is going to be accurate, but you could be wrong, and you should be upfront about that. And by presenting scenarios where you highlight that is in fact a scenario where this doesn't make money is important, because if you don't do it, somebody is going to do it for you. So what that might look like is something more complex like this, where you could have, based on today's performance, based on where you think it's going to go, you can make this more flexible, adding a lot of different complications here. Yes, I just jumped from somewhat simple to something a bit more complex. But the idea being is you can have different scenarios that paint different pictures. In this one, I know it's not as clear on this slide here, but if you're looking down here at the bottom, net test of cost for this particular concept, in scenario one, hey, we're not going to make any money. Okay. We're actually going to lose some money. But in scenarios 2 and 3, which you can make some arguments for that are more likely based on the data that you have, hey, look, we're going to actually make some money. Can we attain some buy-in? Are people willing to take this on? We have risk mitigation strategies, et cetera, et cetera. But hey, here's an opportunity for us. Let's try and take it. So some key takeaways. Everything you do can be converted to euros. Everything. Dollars, euros, any currency, it can be converted to money. And you should be cognizant of that. Understand how your business works, how your product works, and how it ultimately generates revenue for the organization. You should understand the financial constraints of your organization when thinking about how do I present the financial analysis to various members of the organization. Again, if you got a short runway, probably an NPV analysis doesn't make sense. Okay. But if you just got seed funding, maybe it makes a lot of sense. Maybe you just pass through a Series A. Maybe you got a 5-year runway. Maybe you can do a truncated version of an NPV and use that as a means of justifying something as a bigger bet. And last but not least, be transparent about your guesses and work with your finance team to validate things. This is normal for you to have to make a guess. It's just how these things work. And that guess should be an educated guess. You should have data to back it up, but be transparent. Hey, we think this is what's going to happen. We do not have a crystal ball. We cannot see into the future, but we can use data to help inform our decisions, and that's what we've done. Hope you found that helpful. Thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to discuss finance with you and product management, and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing and hand it back to you, Maria.
Thank you so much, John. That was a fantastic session. I think we all enjoyed it a lot, and it was very, very interesting. I hope everyone can see my screen fine now, and I will jump right in. So, yes, again, thank you so much. We are going to move on into the second part of our live stream, which is our Q&A session with John. And I encourage y'all to share your questions, doubts, or any comments on this presentation via Slido. Slido is what we use for our questions. And you can see the QR code on your screen and the code in case you can't QR code scan. You can just put the number in and it'll work as a charm. So moving on, I will just collect all the questions for now, but tell you a little more about what we do at Product People meanwhile. So let's talk a little bit about the use cases of when you can engage us and what essentially is what we do. So first of all, at Product People, we are interim or fractional product managers. So we cover parental leaves, we scale your product very quickly, and we lead key initiatives while bridging the gap until a full-time employee joins. So that means that our missions are rather short. They span from 3 months to a year, but they're very useful for important and urgent initiatives. Also, we can coach your team and consult on multiple topics and let you really elevate skills and set up personal development goals. Finally, we do also product discovery for next initiatives in your company, such as marketing, user research, and also run a low or no code pilot MVPs. And moving on, we also work with a ton of different companies and industries, and we work with both B2C and B2B. On this slide, you can see some of our clients that we worked with in B2C. For example, Zalando, Tier, Freenow, Depot, Omio. I'm sure you've seen at least one or two of these companies, and we've helped them all over the years. And this is the slide with all different B2B clients, such as Ametria, World Health Organization, Sastrify, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And we really enjoy that all these projects are so different and allow us to really keep building up our portfolio of skills and different clients. These are some notable metrics that we like to mention. such as that we worked with over 70 different clients from Series A startups and publicly listed companies. And I personally really like to mention that product people is over 62% all women, and 66 of them are in leadership roles, which I think is very honorable to be part of this company because it's always fun to be surrounded by girls. All right, now we can move on onto the Q&A. Sorry. And I will just read out the questions to John and he can answer them in a free way as he wishes. So the first question is, any tips on how to best track the ROI or savings of a given project throughout the duration according to your initial prediction?
So if I understood the question correctly, it's you made this prediction, now you want to be able to compare on a month per month basis, on a week per week basis, something to show those actual projections are happening. I think, first and foremost, depending on what you are trying to track, it is super important that you have your metrics set up appropriately and some sort of a tool to assess those metrics. So as an example, from growth perspective, if you believe or you have some data to suggest every 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 additional customers leads to X amount of revenue, then as a leading metric, you should be tracking how many new customer acquisitions did you get or how many new users did you get. And then you can use that as a means of tracking, hey, this is the metric we were using for the basis of this prediction. Is that tracking? And then as a lagging indicator, it could be the actual cash flows that are coming into the organization as a consequence. So you can be tracking both of these things simultaneously. Again, you're going to want to work with your friends in finance if it's actually tracking the revenues themselves to see if there's some means or some ability for you to get sales metrics of some sort to see the actual numbers. But at a bare minimum, you should have the leading metrics that you want to track that should then eventually lead you to whatever that lagging metric is. And again, that could be some revenue gain, it could be a cost saving, something. But it's also as simple, whatever tool that you're using, doesn't matter. You could just take that data from wherever it's coming from and dump it into an Excel spreadsheet, just like I did here. And you can track it manually, even if you don't have the appropriate system set up to have some sort of a financial calculation done automatically. Figure out a way to get that data on a week per week basis. Maybe it's a SQL query. I used to have to do that back in the day, not so much anymore. Maybe it's going into a Tableau dashboard, right? I'm not sure how your organization is set up. And it could be pulling the data manually and putting it into a spreadsheet and then tracking. And you might have been wrong, and that's okay. It's about learning, it's about growing, and about pivoting if you have to. So hopefully that answered your question.
An amazing point, John. And I do agree that it's all about the learning curve. We have another question. How can PMs quantify intangible benefits, such as improved brand reputation, growth potential of an employee when justifying a budget? Or should they even be quantified? I think it's a very interesting one.
It is an interesting one. I mean, I'm still of the mindset that practically everything can be converted into some sort of revenue generation or cost savings, or even the intangibles have some sort of a tangible benefit. Like, let's take this, if I understood the question, or if I heard it correctly, an intangible benefit being like employee growth of some sort, like they benefited. Well, it's possible, probably very difficult, but possible to show if you're able to upskill your employees, then their productivity might increase in some way. Maybe you can, with developers, it's a bit easier, right? Because maybe you can monitor their velocity through Jira. Hey, look, we just invested in some sort of an upskilling program to help them learn a new type of coding, or maybe to implement agile methodologies of some sort. And now we're doing full-blown Scrum when we used to not, right? Maybe we can track velocity and show, hey, we're actually delivering more on a week per week basis than we used to. that can be calculated into dollars. Another thing to think about too, employee satisfaction and happiness are not only drivers of productivity, but potential cost savings because recruiting and onboarding new people is very expensive. So maybe you can work with your friends in HR to get some sense of what it costs to recruit and onboard somebody new. And if you can show that your initiative led to a reduction in people leaving the organization, well, for every person that stays is one less person that has to be recruited. There's a way to figure out the finances around that. Um, so I think you don't have to do it for everything, but I think it's very much possible so long as you have the right information, the right data, and you know who to talk to.
Yeah, I also think that like everything can be converted into numbers if you put enough effort in it. And we have another question, which is any hints on how to do the educated guess of revenue?
Yeah, it's very tough. It's easier if you already have a product that exists, right? And so you want to do some sort of an iteration on a product that exists. There's a super famous example of this with Amazon figuring out the right color of the checkout button, right? They did a bunch of research and a bunch of A/B tests to show, hey, if we change the color of the checkout button to from what it was to what it is, they saw an increase of X% uh, persons clicking and going into checkout. Okay. Did an A/B test, meaning for only a portion of the consumers. They tested these different, they did multiple A/B tests, Amazon, they're giants, to test different colors for those checkout buttons. And we're able to compare, hey, how many persons were able to check out with this color versus that color. It made it to the checkout screen. And then once you're at the checkout screen, the checkout flow, there's a calculation they can do to see how many people actually ultimately end up purchasing something and what the average basket size is and so on and so forth, right? So, um, the idea being here that there's always like if you have a product that exists and the product is generating revenues, you can think creatively about how would this improvement lead to whatever the call to action is that hope generates revenues for your organization. Again, e-commerce is simple, sell more things. Maybe it's more complex, like you need more videos created on YouTube in order to generate ad revenue. Like, how do you make it easier for somebody to create a video? TikTok figured that out before YouTube, and it figured it out in a better way than YouTube, right? By making it super easy. So it's much harder if it's 0 to 1. It's much harder if it's a product that doesn't exist, whereby you're going to have to do a lot of market research and you have to think about comparables, like products that solve a similar problem to the one that you're trying to solve with your new product and see what they do in terms of revenue generation, sales, and so on. So that ends up being a lot of market research. And this is where the classic MVP comes into play, where you start throwing some things out into the ecosphere to test. And based on some data, you'd say, hey, we threw out a dummy landing page for a product that doesn't exist that solves a problem similar to this other one. And we presented that in front of X thousands amounts of persons online, and this percent clicked. That's an indicator to us that we could probably sell that amount, right? But a lot of it's trial error. And again, you're going to get it wrong. Hopefully you don't get it so wrong that you cost the company lots of money. And hopefully you get it wrong to the point where you actually make more money. It's point is it's a guess, but it should be an educated guess.
Absolutely. I think it's all about the research and putting the effort into what you said. So that's a great answer. I see a couple more questions, but if you still want to ask another one, we will still have a couple of minutes after the one I ask right now. So please leave those at Slido. So this question is how can product managers proactively address potential cost overruns in the budget proposals to reassure C-level executives?
Cost overruns in the budget proposal. So this is in attaining budget upfront, or you're anticipating now that the project is active that there's going to be a cost overrun. Do we have a way of clarifying?
Anticipating now that it's active. We got a clarification.
Now that it's active, sure. Um, be transparent, 100%. The sooner you can communicate, the better. That there's going to be some sort of a discrepancy between your original projections and what you anticipate. And also recalculate, right? I showed a pretty complex financial analysis with multiple scenarios, right? One of those scenarios being a negative outcome. Um, you know, you could start showing a new scenario, which is based on the reality that you're experiencing, and it gives the organization an opportunity to reconsider. Sometimes you want to pull the plug before it's completed, right? And that's okay. So long as the organization understands that doing so has costs to it, so to speak, um, and can reallocate those resources to something different that actually is going to benefit the organization in a better way. Pivot, right? It's important to communicate this as early as possible. And if you're going to wait until the last minute and suddenly your organization is bleeding and this thing is not going to turn around, uh, then you've shot yourself in the foot because now, not only was your original analysis incorrect, but you didn't take the appropriate actions to try and correct the situation by either pivoting on your original concept in some way or giving persons within your organization an opportunity to abandon it, right? Sunk cost fallacy is a real thing. Just because you've started investing in something doesn't mean you have to continue investing in it if it proves out to be the wrong thing, right? We make educated guesses. It's not the outcome that's always what matters. It's the analysis that was done to lead you to that decision is what's most important. And look, the real world, things change. You did everything perfect, and then suddenly a brand new technology comes out that disrupts what you were working on. A new regulation that nobody was anticipating disrupts what you were working on. A competitor, a giant competitor, perhaps, secretly built the same thing. And now your market share is going to be dramatically reduced. These things happen. Pivot as soon as you can.
Great answer. Great answer. I see a very interesting question, which is almost like a mini business case for you, John. And let's see if we can unwrap it. So I don't know if it's a hypothetical situation or not, but this is what the person said. We are enhancing a feature to improve user retention and engagement, but we struggle to attract new users. We need support from the finance team for user acquisition, but we currently lack sufficient data to convey our progress. How can we effectively communicate this?
Okay, so need to attain new users, but you don't have data on how to attain new users, essentially. Um, is there a way to confirm that?
I think it's more about that they are struggling to attract new users because of lack of finance, but they are enhancing the feature and improving user retention. So it's a situation where they don't have anything to show for in the finance team about their progress. But there is progress which is more like qualifiable than quantifiable.
Understood. Okay. So yeah, situation being like you think that there has to be some sort of marketing spend in order to attract new users. And once you have those new users, you have some information to show that the persons currently on the platform are actually staying on the platform because of feature enhancements that you've recently developed. Okay, if I understand correctly. So look, you can do a before and after sort of analysis to show hey, here's our user retention before we've made these enhancements. Here's our user retention after. Now that we've done this, and what is the impact from a revenue generating perspective on that retention, right? You can do a calculation that shows since we've made these changes, we are now having X% additional retention, whatever that happens to be for your organization. Multiply that by the revenue generated per retained user. Okay. And now you can do a before and after comparison, and then you could say to your friends in finance, look, if we are able to get 1,000, 10,000, 50, I don't know what number you need, but if we're able to get X amount of additional persons to get onto the platform, here's what the financial outcome is going to be because we can see that we now have this new retention percentage. Right? If you're on the platform, you stay, and this is how much money is generated by those that stay. All right. And then use that as a basis for a business case to say, we believe that, and you could just do some basic Googling on this, doing a Facebook marketing play, doing a YouTube marketing ad. I don't know, whatever channel makes the most sense for your product. If we're able to figure out the cost of that spend and what the projected uh, new user generation that comes from it, and show, hey, getting them into the top of our funnel, we're going to keep more of the people in there, but we need the budget to get into the top of the funnel because we think we're able to keep more people in the funnel. I hope that made sense. But show how you've improved, show how that leads to new revenues, and do some backwards math to say, if we had this amount of additional customers on the platform, it would lead to this amount of additional revenue. That helps you then justify whatever the cost is of your advertisement that you think you need in order to attain new persons on your platform.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, John, for diving into that. I think that this will be our last question for the day because we are already running out of time. And next live stream, you can for sure ask more questions. And also, you can reach out to John directly if you need to pick his brain. I just want to conclude with these 2 points. We've concluded with our like topic for the day, but I also always like to mention that we are actually hiring right now for associate product manager and product manager roles. We have them open, so if you scan this QR code, you can go to the link and learn more and apply. And also, you are always welcome to subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out monthly, and we share our insights and experience about being a product manager, also fun cases, and a lot of interesting info. Finally, I want to talk about the next week's live stream where we'll have Tipa Koluru, Director of Product at Go Cardless, talking about the myths of API product management. And this will happen next week at the same time as always. And you can sign up already for it so you don't miss it. And also, if you want to invite any of your friends, colleagues, or pals, just free to share this info because that helps us a lot to grow as well. So thank you so much for being here with us. We were very happy to have you here on our live stream. And every person who joined, we wish you the best of luck and have a great evening.